Welcome back, everybody. All right, so let's go ahead and let's add in or make a new kind of computer. Now, one thing we need to do is we need to add in a modifier here. So if we go ahead and we click on this little wrench here, what we're going to do is we're going to add a modifier and we're going to add in the bevel modifier. Now, if you look at this, all this does is it creates, and I'm going to tab into edit mode, by the way, and as you can see here, this does create, it makes the box look a little bit more interesting here. I'm going to escape out of this here. In fact, one thing that I should probably mention is that when you add a modifier in edit mode, it is different than adding a modifier in object mode. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead, I'm going to do that there. And you can see here, you can add it as many segments as you want. Now, remember how I said in the last tutorial that you want to make everything that you do as low poly as you possibly can. There's two reasons for that. If you're into interactive environments like games, you want to make it as low poly as possible because every game system has a vertice count, and if you go over that vertice count, your game tends to lag, depending on the system. Obviously, a console can handle much more than, let's say, a mobile device. But at the same time, let's say you're making an independent movie with a lot of 3D effects. Rendering time actually takes way more time than you would probably think. So the less vertices, the less rendering time. So you can actually change the width too, which is actually really cool. I'm actually going to go ahead and I'm just going to make it like this here. Okay, and you can see that that works out well. I'm just going to tab into edit mode here. And if you go ahead and you select the face, we're just going to go ahead and we're going to move this down here. Okay, and of course you can actually change the width of this quite a bit if you really want to. Okay, so there we go. And that almost looks like a computer in itself. If you look at, let's say, something like a Mac Mini or something like that, it actually looks pretty good. Now, a couple things. Let's go ahead, let's tab back into object mode, and let's go ahead and apply that. Now, once you go and apply that, it finalizes all of your decisions here, okay? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hop into somewhere along maybe the back here, and I'm going to hop into the line select, and I'm just going to simply move this up, and I'm going to simply move this down like this here. All right. And if we really want to, let's hop back into face select. And I like face select the most, by the way. And by pushing shift, I'm going to select all of these faces here. And I'm going to simply move it in just a bit. Okay. Now, if we really wanted to, we could really spend a lot of time detailing the ports here. But there's two problems with that. Number one is, let's say you're doing this for an architectural render. Are we really going to be focused on the backside of the ports of the computer? Probably not. If you're making it a game, this is there specifically for it's there specifically for purposes of, just saying it's on the computer. No one is going to be looking at the backside. However, you might want to have something coming out of this. So let's go ahead and model that now. Let's go over to the tools region here and let's click subdivide, and let's go into line select, and I'm just going to simply move this over here just like that. Okay, and if we really wanted to, we can do a loop cut here, and I'm going to actually do a loop cut just like that. Okay, and so you can see here that there is a loop cut, and all we have is a couple of boxes here. If we really want to do that exact same thing again, we can just simply go loop cut, move it over here, and then loop cut again and move it over here. Now there's several ways you can actually make extra vertices, and this is one of them, but that's probably the easiest. Now let's go ahead, let's click on face select here, and all I'm going to do is I'm actually going to select all of these here, and I'm going to move it to an angle where I can see it best. I'm going to push E to extrude and then Y to lock it on the Y axis, and this is where our ports are going to be here. And just for fun, you know that like when you plug in something to your computer, all the ports look a little bit different. So I'm just going to go ahead, I'm going to extrude these to different lengths here, just like that. Okay. Now, if you really want to, you can go ahead and you can kind of scale that in and whatnot. And actually, that actually looks pretty good because that usually looks kind of like something there. But that's a very low poly model of a computer there. Now, you're probably wondering, we can even extrude this again by pushing Y and maybe scale it in again if you really want to, is you're probably thinking, well, how do we do the chords here? Well, the chords would be a little bit more tricky than you would probably expect. There's two reasons why. You'd have to use a cylinder, and the more detailed the chord, the more vertices you have to have. So let's just go ahead and let's leave it at this here. Now, this looks incredibly basic, but at the same time, if we put this next to a monitor and we put that we took the last tutorial and moved the monitor beside it, it would look fairly believable, especially if your aesthetic is very minimalist and simple. I'll see you guys in the next tutorial.